Before I begin this video, yes, this is the first video I'm releasing in the new year 2021. I have not released any best or worst of last year yet because, frankly, I'm not done watching every single 2020 movie that I want to see yet because The Father isn't out until like February. Pieces of a Woman comes out in the next couple days. There's still some movies that I would like to see before I put out some of my favorites of the year. I could easily make a worst list at any time because really that doesn't matter. like who cares? Celebrating the worst of movies, I don't think I need to be too complete with that. But the best one is the one I'm concerned about. So I do want to talk about Soul because this is a movie that is pretty big, obviously, and I was trying to around the time New Year's Day had passed, but I had to cover someone's shift at work, and then I was kind of slammed for the next couple days. Now I have a day off, so let's talk about Soul. Also, I would like to talk about something that makes me happy to distract me from the shit show that is America right now. Holy fuck. Please let me have this. I'm sorry I don't have a best or worst, but please, just let me talk about Soul at least. Fuck. Alright, let's do this. Soul is the latest Pixar animated film to come to theaters. Sorry, I meant home video on Disney+. This movie is about a man named Joe who is a middle school band teacher who has big aspirations to actually play professionally. And he at one point gets a big break. One of his past students informs him that there's this really famous jazz musician that's gonna play. He should go meet her and see if he can play tonight. And it seems like everything's going well. Then all of a sudden, he falls down a manhole and drops dead. And right before he's sucked into this void of the great beyond, he realizes, I don't want to be here. I gotta get back to my life because it's just now getting started. He winds up in the great before, where a bunch of souls that are about to enter human bodies are, where they start to learn their traits and what makes them them. And in order to get back to Earth, he has to help this soul named 22, who is really skeptical about Earth. Many people, like famous people who are now dead, tried to convince her that life is great, it's worth living, go down there. But she has flat out rejected that completely, so they have to get along, and he has to show her a meaning to the life that she does not want to live. I was really excited for this movie because it's the next Disney Pixar movie that is an original film. Those are always ones to be really excited about. Obviously, there are some sequels that Pixar makes that are incredibly exciting to see, some that are like, I don't know about that, but it's really the originals where they really shine through. And this movie was being directed and written by not just Kemp Powers, who kind of got his start, at least according to the IMDb page for him, as a staff writer on Star Trek Discovery, and then not only did he do this, but he also adapted One Night in Miami for Regina King, that movie that's coming out next week on Amazon. So that's pretty exciting that he's got these two really big projects out right now, but it's also co-directed and written by Pete Docter, who also came up with the original concept for this movie, who is also one of my favorite Pixar directors because he's made a lot that are important to me. Monsters, Inc. is obviously a really fantastic one with great characters, with a relationship between Sully and Boo that really tugs at your heartstrings. And then he also made Up, which is my favorite Pixar movie. It's my favorite animated film right behind The Lion King. It's really great. It's really emotional, obviously. Even as a kid, I watched that in theaters, and the beginning made me sad, and then the scrapbook bit near the end really got to me as a kid, and still now. Because Up was a movie that was obviously entertaining for kids, but it had this theme that would probably resonate with them because they care about the character so much. But then there's also adults who are going to really resonate with that story as well, because essentially Up is kind of about how life isn't just about the grand big adventures you take, it's also about the little moments that you share with the people you love. He continued challenging kids with his themes with Inside Out, where he talked about emotions and how basically sometimes being sad is okay, and bottling that up and trying to hide how you're feeling isn't actually helpful and could actually lead to further disappointment and sadness that is uncontrollable in your life. And sometimes some of the greatest joy can come from moments of sadness. So Pete Docter has made some movies that really meant a lot to me, that really brought me into the stories, made me engage with the characters, brought many tears to my eyes. And when I heard that he was making Soul, and when I heard the premise and saw the trailer, I was like, oh boy, I'm sure he's gonna knock this out of the park. This has gotta be great. And I will admit right off the bat, this is definitely not my favorite Pixar movie. I definitely have others that are above it. But I really love this movie. It is so fantastic what they're able to accomplish with this. It is so good. Just the way the movie even opens too. It doesn't feel like your traditional kind of Pixar movie. Like, they have the Disney logo obviously, but the fanfare is done by the middle school band that Joe is teaching, so it sounds awful. And it's like, oh my god, they're not going with the traditional, just everything is so grand about this intro. Just no, we're gonna include some of the narrative in this intro too. And they don't even have the title card, and a lot of like the main credits come up until like about a couple minutes in. And even when it does, like the music that plays with it, the way the title cards even come up and are edited, it's really different. And I was like, this is gonna be something really, really special, isn't it? And it was. Now that I've mentioned the music, I would like to say that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, what a score for this film. This score was fantastic. And of course you also have John Baptiste, who plays on the Stephen Colbert Show. He did a lot of the original jazz pieces that Joe plays in this movie, and they're incredible. The way they animate Joe's hands too, they study John Baptiste playing the piano and animated to that. That's incredible. You know, like, it's amazing. A lot of times when characters play instruments in an animated movie, it's a lot of like, hey, they're just kind of moving their hands, whatever. But in this, like, the way he plays the piano in such intricate detail, it's like, oh my god, this is stunning. Obviously, animation in Pixar movies, it's beyond great at this point, but it's just always so amazing to see what they do with each project. The way they design New York City, the way it feels really lived in. Someone even tweeted like a while ago, like back in 1999 when Toy Story came out, they could only afford a couple character models, and now you look at the streets of New York and Seoul and everyone is different. It's incredible. And then you have the designs for the void entering the great beyond, and then the great before, this kind of astral plane you go to. Everything is so vibrant and beaming with creativity. It even changes like some of the art style too, depending on where you're at. And it's so visually fascinating to look at. There's a lot of characters named Jerry, believe it or not, one of them voiced by Richard Iota, who are really funny to watch, but it's also really cool to watch them because they're animated in such a way that's just so visually striking. There's one character named Terry that works with them too, and that character is really funny because Terry's investigating an irregularity in some of the data they're examining. So every time they cut back to Terry, Terry kind of has like this kind of like snooty attitude towards them, but a lot of the times the Jerrys are just like completely oblivious and they're just really about positivity and, you know, good job guys. So they did a really great job of building up the world. The music is great, the animation is spectacular already. How's our main character Joe though? Fantastic. In the first couple minutes, they do a really great job of building him up so that you really care about him. Not just because, oh, he's chasing his dreams, but he's a very specific kind of character. Kids will like that he's chasing his dreams, but I think adults will really be able to relate to him too, because he's someone who's struggling with his identity at the moment. You know, he's like 30, 40 something years old. He's a little later on in life, and he's still feeling like he hasn't quite gotten to where he needs to be. You know, he's passionate about music. He wants to make a career out of it, but he's stuck in a place that, you know, is definitely stable for him, but he wants more. He wants to get to his end goal of his dream, and I'm sure a lot of adults will be able to relate to that too. Like, yeah, I can relate to feeling that kind of unsatisfaction, you know, because I haven't gotten to where I've always dreamed I'd be. So when he does fall down that manhole, in the trailer they always edit it to be kind of funny, so I thought that's not how he's actually gonna die, but in the movie that is how he actually dies. But it's not funny in the movie, it's actually like, ah, dang it, you know, it's actually really tragic, and you root for him to get back to Earth. You're all for what he wants to do because you feel for him. Jamie Foxx is excellent as the character. There's not one moment in this movie where I was like, that's just Jamie Foxx playing a character. I always just looked at it as Joe. It is just Joe to me whenever I hear that voice. He did such a great job playing this character. And the way he interacts with 22, played by Tina Fey, she is really great as this character because she's the kind of character they kind of build up. Like, she's really annoying and she's really stubborn. A lot of dead historic figures have tried to convince her life is worth living, and she is really hilariously rejected them, which sounds funny and is also funny in the movie because even though she's annoying in the context of the movie, she's not actually annoying to the viewer. And in some cases you will be able to relate to her too because she talks about how miserable living a life on Earth must be and what's even the point. And I feel like a lot of people might be able to watch that character and go like, you know what, yeah, 22 is onto something here. So it's an interesting clash of characters, Joe really wanting to get back to Earth and trying desperately to show 22 what life is all about, what you can be passionate about, what can drive a person, and 22 just kind of being like, meh. But 22 is also that kind of character where after a while you kind of realize, you know, Joe is still the main character. This is still his story, but a lot of this is riding on 22 as well. Like, 22 isn't just a comedic relief sidekick character. Like, 22 matters in this story, and I'm feeling something for her. That's how great they build up these characters. Graham Norton is even in this movie as like this hippie who gets into a trance so he can travel into like this astral plane kind of place, and it's really funny. You know, he's got such a really great voice for animation. I'd like to see him pop up in other stuff if it's about the same quality as this, because I think he's a really funny guy in general, but in this movie also, his character is just really fun to watch. As much as I'm saying this movie is really funny, it's really fun to watch, the characters are all great, this movie does what a lot of Pixar movies have also done before, but in this one maybe even a bit more. It's fun for kids, kids will get a kick out of it, they'll really like it, but it's also geared towards families, and really in the case of this movie, adults might actually be taking more from it. Not just because they say hell multiple times, like just a string of like little kids saying hell at one point, and I was like, oh my god, they allowed this? Cool for them. And this is where I'm gonna start to get into some mild spoilers. If you haven't seen Soul yet, and if you really care about seeing that like completely blind of important details, then skip to the grade at this point in this video. But ultimately, there's two existential movies that came out this year, you know, Soul being one of them, and then you also have I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Both are kind of important to me. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is very dark. It's a nightmare that Charlie Kaufman was able to perfectly kind of capture into this movie. You know, it's scary in the sense that he's putting a real fear of his about the human condition on the screen, and it's a fear that I could also relate to, and I'm sure many people looked at and went, yeah, I'm honestly really terrified of this too happening in life, where you're living your life but it's not going the way you think, and it ultimately leads to sadness and despair of what could have been. But where I'm Thinking of Ending Things is really depressing and kind of scary, you know, a movie that I love so much but I don't know if I'll ever watch again. Soul is the more upbeat and inspiring version of that, where they even acknowledge, like, yeah, sometimes things don't go the way we expect. This is your last chance before I get into anything specific about the spoilers. Last chance. Okay, so Joe at one point does play with this famous jazz musician that he admires so much. He gets back to Earth into his body and he plays with the band, and you know, it's great, it's really fun, but afterwards it's kind of like, I thought things would feel kind of different. I thought I would feel like better than I did before, but I still feel kind of unsatisfied. And I read on Twitter, Pete Doctor's Twitter, that what inspired the story was having a main character fulfill their dream, but then what happens next, you know, then what after that? And then the scenes that kind of follow it up after that really strike a chord, not just with me, but also a lot of the adults. A lot of kids, unfortunately, don't have the life experience to fully understand what it is that Joe's going through, but I'm sure a lot of adults that have had regrets or maybe have wondered, what could I have done differently in life to maybe do what I love full time as a job instead of maybe settling for something else in service of like a stable family life? Like, what if, essentially? And this movie doesn't necessarily say don't chase your dreams, that's just pointless. This movie's like, yeah, you can do that, but you know, sometimes that isn't what's going to fulfill you in life. Your purpose on this planet isn't necessarily going to be, you know, you love doing this, so you're going to do this full time and create like this big legacy. Sometimes that doesn't happen. But that's okay too, because sometimes some lives are worth living if you are impacting the others around you, if you're being friendly to them, if they're friendly back, if you create a community amongst your friends. If you have family that love and support you and you love and support them back. It's the little things that make life worth living, where you're just simply living. So where I'm Thinking of Ending Things is very dark and depressing by the end of it. Soul has a lot of the same message of like, yeah, sometimes things don't go the way you want, but there's a beauty in that too, in finding something else. You know, in doing something else in life. And it's never something you should be disappointed or upset by, because there's so much around you that makes your life worth it. And that to me was really something. You know, for a Pixar movie, there's so many Pixar movies that handle mature themes. And, you know, it's always fun to see a sequel that you want to see of a Pixar movie come out, or when they're just having fun Not in the cases of the Cars movies, especially not Cars 2, but you know, every studio is allowed to fumble every once in a while. But where Pixar always gets great is when they stick with these really impactful and relatable themes that kids may not fully grasp yet, or they're maybe too afraid to actually fully embrace. But it's always worth having the conversation. Coco, you know, dealing with themes of death and remembering your family history. Up, similarly to this movie, Soul, you know, enjoying the little things and making your life worth it with what you have and not just fulfilling grand adventures. Sometimes that doesn't fulfill you. Even Toy Story 4 in 2019, where Woody kind of realizes doing the same thing with Bonnie isn't working out, it's not the same, and now he has to find his own happiness. And there's nothing wrong with that. Pixar is really at its best when it's really striking a chord at what we all experience, what kids will inevitably experience too. The magic of Pixar at the end of the day is really helping shape our kids, the next generation, and even the adults that watch it into becoming better people and not feeling so scared or worried about what's coming next, because as Pixar always puts it, we all feel the same thing. We understand what kids are feeling. So let's make a movie out of it that could be really digestible for them, you know, something that could really impact them and really help shape their lives in a positive way. And that was really touching at the end of the day. There's a certain scene where Joe is realizing something, and it's not said, there's nothing spoken in that scene. It's just music and visually showing you certain things, and that was one of the biggest cries I've had in a movie in a while. It's so beautiful what they're able to do with this movie. Even the ending of this movie, it ends really abruptly, which is very different for a Pixar movie. Like I said, this is a very different kind of Pixar movie. And there is a part of me, and what holds it back from being one of my favorites is that there is a part of me that is like, you know, you introduce certain characters that I would have maybe liked to see come back just for a proper kind of close, and maybe just give a bit more of a hint about, you know, where things could go. But the point of that ending being so abrupt as it is like, hey, Joe might not even know what he's going to do. Is he going to keep teaching at a school, or is he going to play with this band every night and keep, you know, trying to play for the big leagues? Who knows what he's going to do, but at the end of the day, the point is he's going to live life to the fullest and never let a day go by that he regrets. He's going to enjoy every bit of it. And that is truly special. I'm gonna give Soul an A. This is my favorite animated movie to come out this year. It may not be one of Pixar's best, but goddamn, this is still a really great movie. You know, and that's not really saying a whole lot, because I've given a lot of Pixar movies my perfect score, so this not being necessarily one of my favorites isn't really saying a whole lot, because there's a lot I've given an A+, and this being an A is not bad at all. You know, Jamie Foxx is incredible, Tina Fey is really funny, and she's really great. This movie is emotionally resonant like the best kind of Pixar films. The animation is beautiful, the music is beautiful. Please check this out on Disney Plus if you have not yet. It is so fantastic and so worth your time. But if you've seen Soul, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.